Hello there, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. And today we have Dianna, Jacobsen, and myself. Both of us are going to be doing a combined webinar together with the topic, Who is the Wealthy You? So Dianna is from Shine at Business, and she's a very successful and savvy businesswoman. And she's going to be able to teach us a lot about who is the wealthy you. And without further ado, Dianna, welcome. And I'll just leave the time for you to share with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kitty. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar. When we talk about wealth and money, it's often something that people have a lot of resistance to. We have a lot of old beliefs and conditioning. So if you're taking the time for yourself to have a think about who is the wealthy you, then congratulations for taking that step. So anyone with financial qualifications have to start with the obligatory disclaimer that this is all general information. And when we talk about wealth, there's all these sorts of things that come into the conversation about cash flow and money management and superannuation and tax and all those other scary, horrible things that people tend to shut down to because they're not that interesting and they're a necessary evil and we don't understand them, and often they just make us feel overwhelmed. So I'm hoping that tonight we might just unpack a little bit of the understanding around those things insofar as they relate to each of you into a little bit of plain English, but at least take away a little bit of the scariness with some of the terminology and then relate it back to you and how that creates wealth in your life in all facets, not just around money. Which brings us to the question of who is the wealthy you? And we tend to think of wealth in terms of money, but I would suggest that it should be so much more than that. We should think about the wealthy us in terms of fulfilling relationships, rewarding careers, freedom of choice, the opportunities that we have, healthy bodies, being able to spend time in nature, doing the things that make our hearts sing. So listening to music or enjoying art or sport or being with friends and loved ones, all of those sorts of things, to my mind, add up to that sense of wealth, and that's that holistic well-being. Money is certainly a part of that, and without money, our choices and our opportunities become more limited. So my role and my mission is to sort out the money stuff so that it can be put aside and allow people the freedom and flexibility to then focus on all of the fun stuff that enriches our life and enhances our quality of life for us and the people around us. When the money stuff isn't taken care of, then that can become very stressful and overwhelming and overbearing, and then prohibitive for the other choices that we can make and take away a lot of that sense of wealth and well-being. So what's your definition of wealth? And for each person, that might conjure up something else, something around, childhood conditioning, old beliefs, old patterns, things that you've seen and experienced, whether it was things that you experienced growing up as a child or in a culture or in a social area that you were in or in a particular industry or whatever it might be. But just to ask yourself, is that serving me now? It's not about making anyone right or wrong, but it's just about saying, what is my definition? How do I feel in my stomach when we talk about money and finance and wealth and maths and numbers and so on? And is that serving me, or is that an old conditioning or an old pattern that no longer serves me, and perhaps we could rewrite that? Because our beliefs can be limiting, expansive, all these sorts of things. So many people have blockages and barriers around money because of past experiences. But often we're not even aware of these things. They're just there as a subconscious programming, and we've never stopped to question where did they come from, or are they working for us? So what is wealth to you? Is it the material things? Or is it, as I outlined, some of those more inherent intrinsic things, such as time with loved ones and good physical health and having the opportunities that we're presented with in this wonderful country? and all of the other things that go along with that sense of well-being. So when I talk about wealth and money management, once people overcome that resistance and all the boring feeling, I liken it to pouring water into a bucket. And if we mismanage our money, often without even knowing it, it's like having holes in that bucket and the water's leaking out all over the place. And we might plug a few gaps, but often they're not the ones at the bottom. So if we're not plugging the holes at the bottom, then we're working harder and harder and harder to make more money, but it's just leaking out. So it doesn't matter how much we pour in the top, we're not keeping it, we're not looking after it. And that's not to say that we need to live a restrictive lifestyle where we can't go and enjoy things. We want a good relationship with money, a healthy relationship where we have respect for it and there's boundaries, but there's flexibility and fun built into that. So there's no point working harder and harder if it's just all dissipating and there's never any left, and then we just have to keep working and it's like being on the treadmill. What we want to do is plug the leaks in the places where we don't even realize they're going. And that might be about looking at how our home mortgage is structured, or whether our superannuation is working effectively, whether we have the right insurances so that our assets are protected, and just some of the general things that once they're in place, then we can have fun and flexibility with what's left. So it's also about raising our water level insofar as if we have a mindset of scarcity and poverty, then inadvertently and subconsciously, we'll keep bringing ourselves back to a lower level, back to zero. Think, for example, if you've heard stories at different times of people that have won the lottery, and then within 6 months or a year or 2 years, they're back to where they were before or even worse off. The reason that happens is that on a psychological level, their mindset hasn't changed. So they still picture themselves as poor or struggling or scarcity or all of those sorts of things. Whereas with money management, it's important that we have a congruence so that we raise our mindset and our money level will raise. Raise our mindset, the money will raise. And again, that's like putting corks into the holes in the bucket from the bottom up. And we do it little by little, because otherwise, if we say, here's $1 million, you're now a millionaire, and you've never had anything like that before, then our subconscious just goes, that's ridiculous. I can't conceive of that. And things happen inadvertently, normally, to put us back to where we were, because that is familiar. It mightn't be fun to struggle and it might not be comfortable, but it's familiar. And our subconscious will put us back to familiar. Whereas if we can gradually plug those holes and just raise the water level little by little, then it gives us time to adapt and to sort of assimilate that new way of being. So when we talk about who is the wealthy you, we talk about financial empowerment and understanding the basics, but it's also about having a picture of that wealthy you that you can start to become congruent with. And what that might mean, if we just were to map that out a little bit, is, let me just go to the whiteboard. If we were to have a timeline where we have past, present, and future. And what we tend to do is stand here in the present and we look back to the past, and we tend to do things the same way we've done in the past, and we get the same result. There's often a tangled mess back here, because that's what life's about. We make our mistakes and we hopefully learn some lessons. But this tangled mess might include health, relationships, money, jobs, all sorts of bits and pieces. But as humans, we tend to just keep wallowing in that, which means that we often keep going round and round and round and doing the same thing over and over. Instead, what we should be doing is drawing a line there and saying, if I was to face forward and if I was to look to the future, what would the future me look like? What would this picture look like and feel like? And then come back to today and start putting the steps in place. Start to act as if this future picture is you. Instead, if we're planning, we often look at all the obstacles and all the barriers, and then we keep running into them. What we need to do is jump across them, say, what does this look like? And then come back to today and put the building bricks in place and just start making decisions and acting as if this is you. And it's really bizarre, but before you know it, that will be your reality. And so therefore it's important to focus on this being the wealthy you in all those facets for that to show up. So if we were to go back to our financial empowerment, let me just stop that share. So if we go back to our financial empowerment, because part of being wealthy is to understand the wealthy you. So what does that mean? That begins with the basics. That's to understand the conversation. It doesn't mean that you have to know it all to the nth degree, but it just means that you need to be conversant with these things and then have people in your team to help you with these. So things like tax, superannuation, insurances, investments or wealth creation, debt, loan structuring, everyday money management or cash flow management, and legal issues. And taken one at a time, there's a million moving parts in that. That's how it would feel to a small business owner or an average householder or individual. There are a whole heap of different moving pieces. And I agree. There's often a disconnect between what accountants might tell you, what your financial planner might tell you, what your bank manager, what your solicitor, what your insurance rep, all these people tell you, not to mention well-meaning friends and relatives, because everyone's got a different perspective and a different slant. They've got their own conditioning and beliefs and their own experiences, and generally they want to keep you safe and they want to give you the best information from their point of view. That doesn't always mean it's the best information for you, and that's why it's important to build a team that has your interest in heart, but also that they can meet in the middle, so that your accountant will give you advice that suits you, that will fit nicely next to your financial planner. Now, they're two different licenses, by the way. So accountants are licensed to talk about tax and tax structures and tax planning and so on, whereas financial planners are licensed to talk about superannuation, investments, retirement planning, Centrelink, those sorts of things, and personal insurances. But financial planners aren't licensed to talk about tax, and accountants aren't licensed to talk about all of those other products. Similarly with bank managers, they will not be the best people to give you advice on any of the aforementioned things. And remember that they're also there to sell a product, and similarly with insurances. So it's important to find someone that you trust that can act as the conduit and the cohesive point for a lot of the information that you're getting. So I thought tonight that we would just go through a few of these and hopefully just get them back to plain English, which might be enough to encourage each of you to go and ask some of the questions without feeling so overwhelmed or intimidated at having to ask advisors about things that you may not understand very well. Kitty and I'll both share our contact details later in the presentation, but by all means contact me if you would just like to bounce your understanding so that you can then go back to your advisors, or if you just want to clarify something, I'm more than happy to help you on that road to financial empowerment. So your accountant will be the person that you talk to about tax entities. So the general ones are a company, a trust, a partnership, or a sole trader. And they each have different tax implications. Yeah.
Are you sharing screen? Because we're still seeing that the screen that you were drawing on.
Oh, really?
Yep. So
okay.
You go back and share your PowerPoint.
Thank you, because it was coming up on my screen, but not on yours apparently.
Oh, here it is. Yep, we can.
Is that on there?
It is on now.
Excellent. Thanks, Kitty. Okay, so we're not going to drill down into each of those because it really is a case-by-case basis. There's no one best answer. It depends. And having said that, it can be that one entity is right for someone for a number of years, and then something else becomes more advantageous as either their stages and situation changes, or maybe even as the tax rules change. What I would say to you, though, is with your accountant, they will be often looking to just minimise tax in that year. They may not be thinking further ahead with things like retirement planning or bigger picture investments and so forth. So do find someone that you feel is aligned to your way of thinking. Superannuation is one that is very misunderstood. I hear people all the time say to me, I don't believe in superannuation. It could just disappear. Superannuation is not an investment in and of itself. So it can't just disappear. Superannuation is like a bucket holding money in various forms. So if I was to, again, let me find the whiteboard again so that I can just unpack that for you. So there are three sorts of superannuation funds. One is what is called retail funds, and these are, industry funds. These are the ones that most people go into when they first leave school and they get put in into a fund. And these are the ones where everybody, where everybody puts in money. So a whole heap of money goes into this fund, and the fund invests in something like, it might own number 100 Collins Street and it's worth $70 million. And then everyone gets a distribution from that. There's not a lot of choice. There are not a lot of options around investment. You don't have very much control over that. This is usually governed by, a committee or a board who make those decisions. And these super funds are like the Hesters, the Vic Supers, the Cbus, all of those sorts of ones that are great generally for younger people. That's not to say they're not good later on, but sometimes as circumstances change, then we need to have more say in managing our money. I often liken superannuation to the part of our money management that fell down behind the filing cabinet 5 years ago and we haven't even noticed. Whereas superannuation for most Australians ends up being your second biggest asset after our house, and yet it's something that no one pays any attention to or gives any decision making over. With these industry funds, we don't have a lot of choice over the investments. We don't have a lot of say over the fees because they're just linked to the investments. And the other thing that we use superannuation for is to hold personal insurances, so life insurance, income protection insurance, and total and permanent disability. Now, with industry funds, there's normally not a lot of choice. They have a couple of default insurers and you just go with those, which is why I say they're often better for younger people when we have good health and not too many concerns, because after that, the insurances start to not really be a good fit. At the other end of the scale are self-managed super funds. And these are a bit of a pop phrase, really. They became a bit of a status symbol probably about 15 or 20 years ago, and it was the in thing to have our own self-managed super fund. While it's called self-managed, it does mean we get a choice. It just doesn't mean it's the only choice or the best way to go. In a self-managed super fund, we get to pick what investment we hold, the same as we would outside of super, the same as we would decide what term deposit we might have or what shares we might own or other things like that. Therefore, we get a fair bit of control over the fees because they're linked to whatever investments that we choose. And similarly with the insurance policies, we can pick which insurance cover is best for us or our family or our children. The main reason you would have a self-managed super fund is because it can own direct property. Now, it can't own what's called a personal use asset. It can't own your house or something that you predominantly use as a personal use asset. So the best fit for a self-managed super fund are commercial property. So someone that might be operating a retail store, their self-managed super fund might own the shop building, and then their trading entity, their company or partnership or family trust, would run the business and pay rent for that building. The one in the middle is the one that most people are not familiar with. And this is like the happy medium that it's worth going and asking a financial planner about. These are called retail funds, and these are a nice fit between the two. In these ones, you also pick the investments. You pick what term deposits or shares or whatever your advisor might guide you towards. The fees then are linked to that, so you have control over that. And you can also choose the insurance that's right for you. You can't own direct property. So that's the only difference here, in that you don't own the direct property. So this, when we say superannuation, this is like a bucket. They all are. They're like a bucket that just holds the money or the investments that go into them, and then it grows and compounds and is taxed and so on in its own right. So when people say, I don't believe in super, it's really, they're showing that they don't understand what that actually is, because super is just a vehicle the same as a company or a partnership, albeit taxed more concessionally. And as part of that overall picture, it works really well to work with your accountant and your financial planner, because superannuation could be a really great vehicle for tax planning, retirement planning, wealth creation, a whole range of things, estate planning, asset protection. And when used properly, it could be very, very beneficial. So by all means, go and have a conversation with a financial advisor on what is your super invested in. Is it the right thing for you, or should it be reconsidered because it's been there for a certain amount of time and perhaps isn't the right fit anymore? And similarly with the personal insurances. So if I can stop that share and go back here. So insurances is the next thing there, and it's a bit like saying, used car salesman or something. When we talk about insurance, people are always a bit wary about being sold insurance. Insurance certainly has a place, but similarly with the superannuation, it is totally worth asking the question of, do I have the right insurance for myself? So in this instance, we have what's called personal insurance, which is life insurance, total and permanent disability insurance, income protection insurance, and trauma insurance, which are things like strokes and heart attacks and so on. And on the other side of the scale, we have general insurance, which most of us would have because that's our house and our car and our contents insurances. So we tend to insure our contents and our belongings, but we don't always tend to insure ourselves. Now, the big take-home point that I'd like to make on this one is that those personal insurances, and particularly for younger families or lower income families, they're the first thing that we don't have because they take cash and we don't have it. But what you might not realise is that those insurances can be paid through your superannuation. So therefore, they're not impacting on our household cash flow, and that it actually can work out more tax effective to be paying it through superannuation, because super funds are taxed at 15%, which is lower than a lot of our income is taxed at. So therefore, we have more money still sitting in our super fund after tax that could cover our insurance premiums without significantly impacting on our super balances. So if you don't have life insurance or income protection insurance, again, I'd strongly advise that you go and ask the question of a financial advisor, because you're better off having a smaller amount for a lesser premium than having none. Because if something happened to you, how long could your family survive without your income? So just, give that some consideration, that it doesn't have to come out of your cash flow. Investments, wealth creation, it's a bit like saying how long's a piece of string. However, what is right for one person won't be right for someone else. So this could be something like a rental property. It could be a share portfolio. It could just be some money in the bank or in a term deposit. But there are all sorts of investments, and I always say to people, don't put off the wealth creation until you've got your debt paid off, because it'll never happen. I liken it to having three parallel lines where we have the daily operations, the daily living expenses, we have debt reduction or debt management, and we have wealth creation. And over our different ages and stages, it's really just a matter of changing those ratios to be the right fit for our age and stage, rather than saying, I have to get rid of all my debt and then I'll create wealth. Because at the moment, our interest rates are reasonably low in Australia. And so it could be that we can manage our home loan or our other debt, our other borrowings, on a management strategy, and we could have some investments, albeit at a small amount, $20 a week or $20 a month or something, that compounds at a rate greater than we're paying on a home loan. So instead of working our tail off to get rid of a low interest debt, we may be better with someone doing the numbers for us on slowly building up a wealth account in the background. It also adds to that sense of wealth and well-being to just know there's some in reserve. It doesn't matter if it's only a small amount, whether it's $100 or $1,000 or something. It just gives us that sense of well-being that there's a little bit there, and that adds to that sense of raising our mindset, raising our money. Just we've put a plug in one hole and there's a little bit left, a little bit of water left in that bucket. So again, go and get some advice on what might be right for you to just start small, to chip away at putting something aside. Debt is one of those words that people think is bad, and in a lot of instances it can be. Certainly consumer debt, spending debt, and general non-deductible household debt is not financially helpful. However, there's a certain amount of debt that we just need to have in our lives. Most of us can't afford to go and buy a house outright or even a car. What we do tend to get carried away with, though, are interest-free loans and easy car loans or other finance for holidays, for other toys and fun things. And again, it's a case-by-case basis of how badly we need that or how best to structure it. But then it is important that we have a look at how the borrowings are set up, what interest rates they're at, and most importantly, is there a way that we can borrow for the things that are deductible? So that might be for investments, for a rental property, for business expenses, or even for personal study or things that we can claim against our income tax, versus borrowing for a holiday or some other sort of consumer spending that is non-deductible and it just sits there forever and the interest builds up and we don't really get any leverage out of it. So before borrowing for something, again, go and talk to your advisors. I'd be suggesting your accountant on this one. Your bank manager, while they're the person that you might see for actually getting the loan, often they won't be the best people to tell you how to structure it, because they will be looking at equity and serviceability, not at which entity or for which purpose the debt is best set up. I've often seen people work really hard to pay off a debt, such as a business, and then borrow for a holiday, and they've just done themselves out of a tax deduction because they could have kept the business debt and paid for the holiday and still claimed the interest. So things like that, again, will vary on a case-by-case basis. So there's no one size fits all, but do go and get some advice on what best fits for you. Money management is always a topic of conversation, and what we tend to do in our money management is to get money in. Let me just share this one with you. We get money in, that's zero. Money comes in, we pay everybody, pay all our bills. If there's a little bit left over, we think we deserve to go out for dinner, and we put ourselves back to zero. And then the next week or next month, same thing, pay everybody, pay, buy shoes, back to zero. And we have this ongoing boom and bust cycle. In effect, what we're doing is putting water into the bucket and then pulling the plug out of the bottom, and we're just putting our own programming back to zero all the time. It mightn't be fun, but it's familiar. What we want to be doing instead is getting something more like this. So there's a particular cash management strategy that I'm an advocate of, and I'm sure there are others around that also work, where instead of paying everything in full each week, or each month, perhaps we spread things out. So we might pay our phone bill in pieces over a month rather than all in one hit, or our power bill, or our rates, or our insurances, or whatever. The more we can spread things out, the smaller the numbers, and it means that we end up with this more consistent cash flow. And that's like putting, again, corks in the bucket at these levels. So instead of going to zero, it might be that we put some in reserve. I talk about a system called money rules, where we have a few different accounts with different parameters around them, different boundaries, flexibility within those accounts, but they each have a rule around what they're for. And that way we can always have some left over. So we can have a fun money account, a wealth account, a utilities account, a holiday fund if we want, or a Christmas club account, but a holding account, so that when we get these amounts in, particularly if we're self-employed and we don't have a consistent weekly income, we might get project work or more intermittent payments, then we can spread it out rather than having this sense of boom and bust, because we feel great when we get it in, but then we feel awful when we watch it all disappear in front of us, don't we? So I'm not a believer in budget, but I do believe in boundaries. So I think the boundaries works well to have some flexibility without it being rigid and restrictive. And I just wanted to mention the legal aspect of this, which often we don't think about in conjunction with money and finance. But we spend a lot of our life working to amass quote unquote wealth, whether that's just owning our house, whether it is our superannuation, whether it's what we want to leave for our children or grandchildren. The asset protection is important in terms of insurances. It's important to a fair degree in terms of the tax entity that we use, because some tax entities will protect the assets. But then often the estate planning or the exit strategy or the succession planning is not dealt with because we don't want to talk about it. And in that instance, we could leave ourselves open for all of our worldly assets to be dissipated and not go where we want them to go. So I stress quite strongly that you have a talk with a suitable solicitor. Just know that all solicitors don't specialise in the same thing, and that not every will is what I call a garden variety will. Not every situation will be mum and dad and the kids and that's clean and easy. If you've got a business, then chances are you need a more complex will structure, because if it's held in a company structure particularly, or a family trust, then that needs to be addressed separately to the mum and dad assets. If you've got a superannuation fund, there you can set up what's called a binding death nomination, whereby the super fund money is left separately to your estate, or it can be through your estate, but that's a way of separating that if you want something to be left to someone else. Particularly when there are blended families, or anyone in the family is under some sort of a disability, or there's some reason that we wouldn't want to leave money outright, there are ways to segregate it. Too often I see people avoiding their estate planning because they think it's too hard and there's no way of dealing with it. I assure you that a solicitor will have seen that precedent and will be able to make suggestions to you. The other vehicle that is quite useful is a testamentary trust, whereby assets don't get left outright, particularly to young children, or again, if you've got someone in the family with a legal disability, so they might have a physical disability, or there might be an addiction, or some sort of a reason that we don't want to just leave them a heap of money, then it can be left through a testamentary trust where there are some directives around that. The other things to look at there, importantly, are powers of attorney for financial and medical management. So recently in Victoria, the medical side of that was updated. So that's something I encourage you to just check whether your medical power of attorney is still sound. And guardianship for young children, because again, that's an area that's often overlooked. So business, succession planning, estate planning, retirement planning, again, go and get some advice on that, and then work with your team of advisors to make sure that what you have in place is in fact appropriate and suitable for your situation, and that you're not going to risk losing things in the event of your death or legal disability. And also that if you're in business, you've got a succession plan or an exit strategy. Either way, that you're not leaving a big mess for someone that could just lose a lot of things, a lot of money and a lot of assets in legal fees. So with any of this, it doesn't have to be complicated. If you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling that that's complicated, please take a step back and know that you don't have to know all the answers. You just have to find, for a start, one advisor that you can go to and say, what do I do? And if you just have a goal, no matter how small it might seem, if you can just take one step towards your goal, in some cosmic way, the universe brings your goal one step closer to you. So for any presentation I give, I like to leave people with an action plan, because otherwise it's just a conversation and nothing ever changes. So just make yourself a little note that you'll take some action. It might be having a look at your beliefs and seeing where you need to reprogram. It might be creating your vision for the wealthy you and just starting to think about who is the wealthy you. Vision boards are great for that, a pin-up board or a collage or Pinterest or something where you can start to be congruent and see and believe that picture of yourself moving forward, not just in material and monetary terms, but as a person. Set some goals. When you've reached them, set some more, but just start chipping away at them. Find some experts that you trust, or even one, because they'll probably have other people in their network that they can connect you with, whether it's an accountant or a solicitor, financial advisor. Just go and find someone to say, I want to make a start. What do I do? And get started today. Don't keep putting it off. So thank you for that part of your attendance. And we'll just move on to Kitty now. So I will stop sharing, Kitty, and you can take over there.
Great. Thank you so much, Dianna. That was very, very informative, and I've learned a lot from that just short session from you. Thank you so much. Hang on, let me just share my screen. Can you see it? Okay. Okay, so here we are. Thank you so much again. And so let's dive into the second part of the presentation of who is the wealthy you. Can you see my screen, Dianna?
Yep, all good.
All good? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right then, so basically with my take on who is the wealthy you, let me just share a little bit about my personal experience. I was born with a hole in my heart, and so what that means is that when I think about wealth, I always think about health as well. And to me, I always, think about the juggling between the two. And I have a business called Transform and Grow Rich, which basically means that I would love to be able to help people as a transformation facilitator and to help them to grow rich in different areas of their lives. And just by way of introduction, for those of you who may not know me, I have a psychology degree at the University of Melbourne and also a diploma of coaching in health and nutrition with Shaw Academy. And I'm an author, written a book called Juggling Health and Wealth, a health coach specializing in weight management and helping people with, the different areas of transformation as well. So my take on who is pride in terms of really developing that in my life, even though, you know, I'm always a work in progress, and I don't think, you know, that I have it all in terms of all of this health, but I always look at them in terms of something that is my goal. Okay, sorry, I think there is something that's blocking. Can you see this? Okay, and so basically the 5 dimensions of health is spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and social health. And so these are the 5 different dimensions. Oh, sorry, I think there is some technical issue here in terms of the, hang on, just, okay. So these 5 different dimensions, let's dive into each of them. So to me, I always think about the different areas. So the first area is the spiritual dimension. Spiritual health refers to our sense of overall purpose in life, and this purpose is basically found through our values, our belief, and our faith. And having a purpose can help us to maintain a proper perspective and overcome challenges in life. And then the second one is emotional dimension. Emotional health is about our general emotional state, and it relates to our ability to recognize and express feelings, control our emotions, and maintain a realistic perspective on situation. And the third dimension of health is physical health. It is the bodily aspect of health, which basically I think a lot of us, when we think about health, we think about this area. And optimal health involves the resourceful ways to improve our well-being, such as healthy eating, fitness and weight management, nutritional supplements, rest and restoration. And that's why when you know, I work as a health coach, this is the area that I am mainly focusing in to help my clients to lose weight, feel great, and to regain their energy so that they can spend quality time with who and what they really care about. And social dimension of health refers to our ability to make and maintain meaningful relationships with others. And perhaps, you know, when you think about health, you might not think that social health is an important part, but really, if we have rich connections with people around us, including family, friends, social networks, and community, just like when I interviewed people about what they think wealth means to them, a lot of people actually talks about this element of wealth. Being a wealthy you means that you have social health and that you have, you know, rich connections with others. And so in other words, holistic health means that the areas of all the 5 different dimensions, including the spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and social well-being, need to be in balance in order for us to be holistically healthy and totally well. And so let's have a look at the oxygen mask principle. Now, you know, when you look at oxygen mask, you know, this is a very common principle that a lot of us, when we go on an aeroplane, we always hear about this, you know, to put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others, right? And so it's very important in order for us to be able to support others in different areas of life. We really need to have that, what we call a cup of self-love or self-compassion or, you know, self-care. So that's the first thing. And then, you know, you also need to look after your body, mind, and spirit, as we already talked about. And we need to actually have habits and activities that make you healthier, calmer, and more connected to yourself. And once you start looking after yourself, then people around you, your family, friends, and your community will benefit too. So that's why when we're talking about juggling your health and wealth, in order to be able to balance your health, you will be able to ignite greater wealth in terms of your finances or your business. So there is this concept about abundance mindset. Now, abundance mindset is actually a very important concept where we need to be thinking about, this whole loop. The first thing is about I'm thankful for my paycheck. So whenever you have money, whether it's, from your work or your business, you actually think about that, because gratitude actually enriches our life and makes us richer in terms of, being a wealthy you. And then from there, you will see the peace of mind is another very important concept in the abundance loop. And what that means is, you'll be able to be at peace with your money. And from there, you will have wise choices to be able to, save some of the portion and, to be able to earn more money as well. And then from there, you'll be also able to have positive outcomes and enjoy your financial security. Okay, so let's have a look at manifestation, which is think yourself rich, which is an idea that you really need to be attracting the richness, whatever area that you're thinking about. In the Hebrew word, the word that is phonetically wealthy is this word. And what that means is actually prosperity and peace, wholeness and well-being. And so what that means is basically wealth is not just about money, as both Diana and myself have already shared with you. It's also about the well-being in terms of different areas of our lives. To me, I believe that it is spiritual life, relationship, personal development, health, and obviously finances. So let's play this prosperity game. Now, this game is something that will help you to really manifest yourself, to think yourself rich. So let's imagine that you have a bank account with you. And so this is actually an imaginary bank account, obviously. And so you will make deposit entries and check withdrawals just as if it were an account, right? So make this process as real to you as possible while we do this right now. So first day, you will deposit $1,000 into your bank account, and then you would spend it. Now that $1,000, you can either spend it all in one place or in several different things. So just imagine right now with me, you might want to close your eyes. It's up to you whether you do or not. But basically think about that. If you are given $1,000 in your bank, how would you be spending it? Okay. And then second day, if you are given $2,000, how would you be spending it? So basically think about whether you would be spending it all in one place or in several different things. Okay, so that's the second day. So it sort of like goes on and on. So the first day, the second day, and this game, you can actually play. So let's say on a face-to-face basis or even on Facebook in a group where each day you can actually imagine you're given like the first day 1,000, second day 2,000, third day 3,000, and when it reaches day 50, then you will be having 50,000 deposited into your bank. So when you imagine having $50,000 into your bank, how would you be spending it? Will you still be spending it all in one place or in many different things? So think yourself rich in terms of thinking about whether you are able to actually imagine yourself having that $50,000 on that day 50 and how you will be spending it, okay? And then when it comes to day 300, you will actually be having $300,000 deposited into your bank. And on that day, which is not even a year from the first day, how would you be spending that $300,000? And so basically this game was played in such a way that, you can really manifest and think when you have all this money, finances, how would you be spending it? Like, Diana was talking about the various ways, perhaps, investing or spending it, or different ways that you will be doing it, okay? And when you actually get to 1 year, which is 365 days, you would have deposited and spent $66 million. All right, so I have actually written an ebook called Transform Your Financial Life. And if you're interested in that book, you can actually go into this website, which is my book website called healthwealthformula.com. If you want to maybe either take a picture of that, or like if you want to write that website down, put your email address there and I can actually send you that book. In that book, I talk about the 5 pillars of wealth. And I mean, in my book, Juggling Health and Wealth, in one of the chapters called Millionaire Mentality, I also have a detailed description of that as well. And so the 5 pillars of wealth, I use the acronym of BLISS, B-L-I-S-S. Each stands for a word. So the first one is B, which stands for budgeting. And it's interesting to hear from Dianna about budgeting as a dirty word, which I think it is in a way, and boundary is also a fantastic word, which I think I would be able to actually discuss more with you, Dianna, to actually think about that. But to me, when I think about budgeting, it is the balancing the expenses with the income. It is a realistic financial plan to spend money and determines whether a person has enough money to spend or not. So say my husband Derek and I, we have this app that we used called Good Budget, that we would be putting in all of our income every month, and then whatever that we spend as our expenses, that we would put it in to our Good Budget app, and then we see what the budget is and see how we go. And if for that month we're doing well with our budgeting, then it will say to us, you are a good budgeter. But I'm keen to learn more from you, Dianna, about the boundary side of things as well, which is also very important. I agree that we need to set boundaries for how we spend our money. And then the second thing is leveraging, which is the second word of bliss. Leveraging is where you multiply your time through the efforts of others by setting up multiple sources of income, which Dianna, you also talked about. And the third thing is investing. Investing is committing money or capital to something with the expectation of getting an additional income or profits. So investing may be, properties and other things, but there are many other things that you can invest in. Like to me, invest in myself, like in personal development, is also an investment. And then number 4, S stands for saving. Now, saving is the income not used for immediate consumption, and therefore an act of increasing your assets. And something that I find very interesting is that, a lot of the people that I work with, or some clients of mine, would actually be, having paycheck to paycheck, and they don't even have saving at the end of their pay period. And that's something to be aware of. And that's why I have a really good program, work program that may help you if you are in that situation. And that's what the last S stands for, and it's called shopping annuity. So how many of you have heard of shopping annuity? So you may not have heard of it. Well, it is a revolutionary concept that helps smart shoppers from all over the world convert their spending into earning through a unique tracking system that allows you to fund an annuity through shopping. So when you think about annuity, what Dianna talks about in terms of the concept of the like putting money in investment and or shopping, instead of having the annuity where you would be, let's say, you actually put money in your everyday investment and already spend on everyday purchases. So instead of having to be, putting in a lot of money in your annuity, you will be able to just get that. So let me explain to you how all this BLISS works in terms of a very interesting concept that I'm sure quite a number of you have heard about, and it is called the cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki. So there are 4 different quadrants here. The employee quadrant on the top left-hand corner is the job quadrant, which basically you work for an employer, you trade time for money. And then the one that is below on your top right-hand side is business owner. And that is basically you start a business with a few people, like a partnership, or you employ people. That means you actually walk away and people work for you, and you can leverage on people. And you can actually leverage also a very important concept of SOS, which is your standard operating procedure. And you actually need that system in order for you to be able to, have that money, enough money for that business owner. And then on the right, on the top, the bottom left-hand corner is the small business side, which is basically the S quadrant, self-employed. So these are the professional people who actually, get more money, obviously, than the first quadrant on top, but they don't have time because they're so busy. They do everything themselves, like they are all in one. They're the professional, they're the owner, they're also the worker themselves. So quite a number of people that are on this call, perhaps, if you're a small business owner, then you will be in that quadrant of self-employed, and, you have to do everything on your own. And finally, you would have the investor quadrant, which is the I quadrant, the quadrant for, and, money working for you. So what my specialty in terms of, both being a health coach, but also having a business of my own, which is a shopping annuity, like I explained previously, and also is an internet franchise business, is what we call the sharing economy, based on the paradigm shift, similar to the idea of like Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, and eBay. So these are the companies that they don't actually own their own things. Say, for example, Uber. Uber actually don't own their own cars. Airbnb, it doesn't own any real estate. And Amazon, they don't make anything. And eBay, they have no commercial outlets. So basically, the business model is the platform that connects the goods and services to consumers. So this is basically just a very simple explanation of, like, for those people that may be finding it difficult to save money in terms of the bliss, or, they have no boundary issue, they have boundary issue, or they want to invest, but they don't actually have money, then this would be a really good asset for you. And in order to share economy, you'll be able to convert your spending into earning. So finally, I'd like to give you a quote which I personally have written, which I truly believe in, and it is that wealth is related to the parallel that exists between our holistic health and the material world. Obviously, when we think about finances, and that is important for all of us, but, holistic health is also important, as I mentioned, about the 5 dimensions: the spiritual, emotional, mental, social, and physical, and the material world, the 5 pillars of wealth: the budgeting, the investing, leveraging, spending, and the shopping annuity, as well as saving. And a balanced life is one where our projects are kept going, our relationships are healthy, and dimensions of health are in order. So finally, I'd like to invite you guys, if you are interested in improving both your health and wealth, upcoming, I've got 2 free webinars. The first one is 4 simple keys to transform your body and mind. And that will be happening August 2nd at 10 o'clock Melbourne and Sydney time. And you can register through this link in front of you, which is bit.ly/transform-body-mind. And then the second free webinar that I'll be hosting is True Wealth from the Inside Out. About 8 years ago, I actually met Richard Branson in a financial education summit. And this webinar that I'll be doing, I'll be sharing what I've learned from him about true wealth. And you can actually register through bit.ly/Branson Wealth. And that will be on the 9th of August, 7:30 Melbourne and Sydney time. And finally, these are some of the things that if you would like to connect with me, kittycheng.com is my website. My number is here. And Dianna and I will also be hosting combined chat with you. And if you guys want to be taking advantage with both Dianna Jacobsen and Kitty Cheng's combined expertise to help you with both your health and wealth, like what we've shared about, then, please either contact Dianna or myself, and you would have received when you registered to this webinar, an email. You can actually contact us to make the time with both of us together, and we can actually do a 3-way call to be, your team of helping you with both your health and your wealth. So that's basically it. Thank you, everyone. And we're just about top of the hour, 8:30. So if you guys want to ask any question, perhaps we can open the room for everyone to do that.
Yeah, so if anyone's got any questions, just either unmute yourself and ask, or put them in the chat box, because chances are you won't be the only one with that question.
Exactly.
Alternatively, perhaps if Kitty and I each put our contact details in the chat box, and then if you wanted to ask the questions privately, you are most welcome to. Okay, so there's mine, and Kitty will pop hers in. So as we said, we are happy to offer 3 sessions to the first 3 people that want them, where we do a one-on-one consultation or a 2-on-1 consultation with both of us, so that we can answer your own questions and perhaps put a bit of a strategy in place for you individually. But you're all most welcome to contact us with your own questions if you want to, even just to steer you with how to ask other advisors or what you might need to concentrate on. But have we got anyone that wants to put some questions in?
Any question, anyone?
Thank you, Sheridan. Thank you for being here.
All right, then if you don't have any question, then we will definitely be able to keep in touch with you, and we'll be having our replay. And if you have any of your people, your friends and family that might find this beneficial, you can get them to contact us, and we can send them this recording as well.
We've either completely confused them or totally enlightened them, Kitty.
I know. I guess, this may be something that you have not thought about, because even whatever that you think about, the wealthy you, it may be, okay, just one area, but there is actually more than one area that perhaps we need to be considering, right? And I really find that it's fascinating to be able to understand, being able to balance and juggle the different areas of the wealthy you is something that will actually enlighten and help us to live a more enriched and fulfilled life. Don't you think, Dianna?
Absolutely. And I've always explained it that finance and tax is here and reality is here.
Yes.
And similarly with spirituality and so on. But my job is to make them meet in the middle and enmesh, so that there's not at one end this horrible money conversation that confuses and intimidates people, and at the other end whatever their reality is, but rather to take all of that resistance and discomfort and confusion out of it. And as you talked about, just to put that in place so that you can get on with doing all the fun stuff that we want to do in life. And that's exactly very aligned with my mission as well, so that money doesn't have to be the reason we can't live a fulfilling life. Rather that we put it in place so that we're not focused on money for money's sake.
I really love your take on, get the money out of the way, and that can actually help us then to reach our goals and our dreams. And that is so important, because if you have a why, obviously you need to have the finances to back that up. right? So that the financial wealth is important. If you have all the other areas, but not to financial, but also the other way around is also important. So thank you. Oh, Sheridan's got a comment here. Very interesting and informative session. Thank you so much for attending. Oh, that's good. And yeah, wonderful. All right then. So if you guys, want to, have any contact with us, or both of us, or individually, please do so, and we will certainly be more than happy to serve you. All right.
Yeah, and a lot of what we do with our wealth, it's not just about wealth for ourselves, either for myself or for Kitty or for any of you listening. We understand that the best way to help other people is, for us